Welcome to the channel. The video that I've put together is a video about the vehicles I've had and where I've been with them. But the purpose of the video is not really to show you the vehicles I've had, but more to explain the life you can have if you have a life of adventure. And it's really just about the amazing places I've been to using a 4x4 and things that I would have missed out on if I hadn't had a 4x4. I think that's really what it's all about. The title that had changed my life was because I chose to go off-roading, really. So it all goes back to 1967. I was sitting on the floor at school listening to the principal read out of a Look and Learn comic all about a trip that some scouts undertook to the Kalahari to look for the lost city. So I was 6 years old. Obviously not much is going to happen at that stage, but I do remember going to the library and rereading the article that he read to us. So then in about 1981, 82, somewhere around there, I'd been working for my dad part-time while I was studying, and I'd managed to save enough money to buy a Hilux cash. It was an absolute dream, and I took every cent I had and managed to buy one for $1,000. It was brand new, and I went to a company called Cooper's Canopies and I got a steel canopy made with a roof rack. That was $100, and I had a bull barn, a winch fitted, which cost me, I think it was about $120. So that was definitely time gone by. I took the vehicle, and obviously only working weekends for my dad, I didn't have lots of money, but I managed to go to Namibia with some friends, and we all shared the costs, and we did some trips to the Drakensberg mountains, did some river crossings and had some fun. And then I went to Botswana. When I went to Botswana, there were only really at that stage 2 vehicles or 3 vehicles available. You could buy a Jeep, you could buy a Land Rover, and you could buy a Land Cruiser, and that was it. And roughly the same time that the Hilux came out, which was the first light, let's call it lightweight 4x4, Suzuki brought out their Jimny. And it was a bit of a toss-up because they were the same price, and the Jimny was amazing, but it was very small, so I bought the Hilux. And 4x4ing wasn't a pastime. 4x4ing was only, the 4x4 vehicles were really used on farms, and very few people use them for recreation. I managed to import a book from America on how to drive 4-wheel drive, and I read it from cover to cover, and it helped. When I went to Botswana, before I'd read the book, I didn't even know you had to deflate your tires in the sand. So it was a challenge, but it was a great trip. I camped in the middle of the Kalahari, and then I got back, got married, and I needed some spare cash, so I sold the Hilux, and I bought, a little while later, I bought an imported Hilux. In Namibia do not manufacture motor vehicles, and they import directly from Japan, and they were importing a really nice double cab Hilux, which I really liked. It just looked different, and I managed to find one on a farm outside a place called Kois, a little village, and I got it for, I think, $2,500, so it wasn't a lot of money. The head wasn't right, so I redid the motor, and from then on I went all over the place. It was really loud. The exhaust on that car sounded, when you were revving or driving up a hill and there was a lot of compression, it sounded like a Cessna just about to take off. It was loud, but it was very nice. You'll see in the picture I fitted jerry can holders to the side of the canopy, and we had an extra 80 litres. At that stage I couldn't get a fuel tank fitted over and above the standard, and it worked for me. A little while later I heard about an 80 series petrol that was available through somebody I knew in East London. I bought it. It had about 180,000 kilometers on it. And it was with that vehicle that I started exploring the Richtersveld. When I bought it, it still had split rims, so I managed to get decent rims and decent tires that are easier to repair. very heavy on fuel, an average of about 33 litres per 100. Then a friend of mine phoned me up and he said he had a he had an 80 series but the fuel injected version. So I sold the white vehicle. The fuel injected motor, or the fuel injected vehicle, was very nice. Fuel consumption wasn't much better, and on one trip I was towing quad bikes to ride across Namibia. There was a group of about 10 of us that rode a fair portion of southern Namibia on quad bikes, and towing up 4 quad bikes on a trailer. So it wasn't a heavy trailer. I got my worst fuel consumption ever. I managed to do 52 litres per 100. So that worked out to about 1.8 kilometers per litre. It was something else. I had a 270 litre fuel tank fitted. Well, I had a total of 270 litres, and there were times that I couldn't do 600 kilometers. The car was so heavy on trips. And I went to Lesotho 3 times. What I did in Lesotho, I went to an orphanage and just generally helped do things around the orphanage on 3 occasions. And on one occasion we went up and we built a jungle gym. So we built a massive jungle gym at the orphanage. We actually built it in Cape Town, disassembled it and then reassembled it at the orphanage. On another occasion we built a school. Well, a classroom, not a school. So we had all the timber delivered, and we basically built the structure, put the roof on, and then the community built the walls. And through all this I got to meet lots of people. I started a 4x4 club in Cape Town, and it grew to almost 400 members. But I had quite a following, so Pajero approached me and offered me a short wheelbase Pajero. It was the 3.2 DRD, really fun car, and I drove that all over. I went to Namibia, I did the Skeleton Coast with that car, and it was fantastic in dunes. After a few months, Pajero came to me and said, I think it was about a year actually, they were going to trade it in and give me a different vehicle. So they gave me a Colt, which is a Mitsubishi product, a pickup, a double cab, a diesel, and again with that, no issues. And at that stage of my life, if you listen to my first comments, I'd always had this passion to go and look for the lost city of the Kalahari. So when I was driving that vehicle, I put together an expedition of 16 vehicles and 2 microlight aeroplanes, and we went to Botswana. Great fun. I had to get research permits from the Botswana government. I spent days in the reference library in Cape Town trying to find books on the lost city. There was an author with the surname of Green, and he had a book with some references, and then I found a book by Faye Goldie on the lost city, and then we tried to find out, sort of putting 2 and 2 together, and his references to landmarks where he'd been. So I did that, and we went up. We never found the lost city, but of course if we found it, it would have spoiled everything. So we just had really good fun. We probably traversed 16,000 square kilometers, and yeah, something I'll never forget. I was at a friend's farm outside Stellenbosch, and he had a short wheelbase Land Rover Defender, a red one, parked in his store, and he bought it for his son, and his son was about 6 at the time, so it was going to be a while, and I managed to buy it from him. It was lots of fun, but again very expensive on repairs. So I went back to the dealer, the service station that were doing all my repairs, and I said, look, I've had it, I don't want another Land Rover ever, you can have it. And they phoned me and they said, we found a TD5 short wheelbase, but we'll give you a money back guarantee. I said okay. So I got everything done on the red one. I sold it to a German guy who was driving it around Hout Bay in South Africa, and I bought the TD5. The TD5 was fantastic, no issues. It really went nicely, 10 kilometers per litre. It had a roof rack. It was just fun, and that went nicely. Then Land Rover approached me and gave me a short wheelbase vehicle to drive, I had a white short wheelbase for about a year, and then every probably 20-30,000 k's they traded the cars in and then gave me another one. So after that, that car was really fun. I took it to a company called LR Services who'd been repairing my other Land Rovers, and they put on terra firma suspension, a British suspension, and it was great. So I had the suspension done, I went all over the place, no issues. They then gave me a green long wheelbase Defender 110, no issues either. It was fantastic. I went to Botswana and I had a really fun experience with that car. We were camping one night, and in Botswana there's no gates and fences, you just camp in the wild with the animals. And we pulled our vehicles into a semicircle, and we had a big fire at the opening of the circle, and about 2 o'clock in the morning we were awoken with screams. A lot of us were in ground tents. There were 1 or 2 people in rooftops, and one of the guys in the rooftop tent was lying with his window open, and he woke up to a lion looking through the window of the rooftop tent. The lion had jumped onto his bonnet and was looking at him, probably reading the menu. That was a great trip. They then traded that vehicle and gave me a white long wheelbase. That vehicle was my last Land Rover. It gave me endless trouble. It kept on going into limp mode. The transfer case would jump into neutral. It wouldn't stay in first gear in low range. Anyway, then I bought myself a 76 series Land Cruiser, brand new. The 76 is a really nice vehicle. Fuel consumption's a little bit better, so I went from 33 litres per 100 to about 17, which is not too bad. And I had the vehicle for 2 years. It was a weekend vehicle. I had a normal vehicle for during the week, and I did some trips with a chap called Andrew St. Pierre White, who's now living in Perth. He's got a YouTube channel. I did quite a lot of trips with him, and I used that vehicle on my last trip to Namibia. We filmed a documentary. So I decided to move to New Zealand. I sold that vehicle, and my wife had always wanted a Jimny or a Jeep Wrangler, and anyway I just bought her a brand new Jimny. But we moved to an area where there's a ridiculous amount of accidents, so I just realized with a Jimny you're the airbag. So I sold the Jimny with 30,000 k's on, and I bought her a Subaru Forester. Initially I just bought a vehicle for transport until I found my feet, and I then bought the FJ Cruiser. I've had the FJ now for 2 years, really light on fuel. I really like the car. Lots of power, and it's fun for what I'm doing, and that's my vehicle for expeditions, stuff where the vehicle might get the odd scratch or two. Anyway, the whole purpose of the story is really just to say that by getting into 4x4ing and off-roading, I got to go to places that a lot of people would never see. Just to finish off, there's a poem that has defined my interests. It's called The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference.